Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the November 28th UAGC Honors Live Learning session. And we're so privileged to have Doctors Peggy Sundstrom and Stubbs here to share some information about graduate programs, specifically master's degrees, and how that might work into your personal and professional goals after you complete your undergraduate degree. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Peggy and Stephanie. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and welcome everyone. We're really excited to present and talk with you a little bit more today. And I will just note that we're hoping that this is an engaging conversation. So, presumably, you saw the title and you came because perhaps a master's degree is in your future. You maybe are uncertain, you might have some questions. So, feel free to use the chat, and we will purposefully, at a few separate occasions, ask for your input.
Great. Welcome, everybody. I'm Dr. Sundstrom, and both Stephanie and I, Dr. Stubbs and I, are with the doctoral programs here at UAGC. And when we were asked to do this presentation, we're pretty excited about it because a lot of the students who come into our doctoral program come from our master's program. So there is a pathway. So we're happy to be here chatting with you. We're going to spend a little bit of time today talking about, well, what are some of those considerations in terms of pursuing a master's degree? Reasons for saying yes, and reasons maybe to say, oh gosh, maybe not right now. We want to kind of give you both sides of the perspective. We do have some evidence from the real world. Dr. Stubbs conducted some interviews, and we have some information from people who have decided to pursue a master's degree in terms of what some of their reasons are. And we'll spend a little bit of time talking about what some of the hot spots are in terms of jobs and career fields right now, which may help you answer that question of whether or not you're ready for a master's degree. So let's just jump right in. I will tell you and Steph, maybe we can just do this little bit of interactive. There you are, great. So I'm with the PhD program in organizational development and leadership. I actually got a bachelor's degree in biology, and I thought I wanted to go to medical school. And when that didn't turn out, I was very interested in public health. So I pursued a master's degree in public health, spent some time working in that field, and then eventually got my doctoral degree. So our career paths aren't always straight. Sometimes they bob and weave and curve a little bit, but we take advantage of them. Dr. Stubbs, how about you? How did you decide to get that master's degree?
Sure. Well, I have to admit, I was a first generation college student, and so I really had never considered anything beyond my bachelor's degree. I was perfectly content with my bachelor's degree, and I remember the conversation when I was having a meeting with my advisor in probably my junior, maybe my senior year, and he asked, "So where are you going to graduate school?" And the thought had honestly never occurred to me. And I started thinking about it, and I realized I had chosen my degree, my undergraduate degree was in psychology and sociology, based on pure love of the discipline. I liked the content. I had no desire to practice. And the types of jobs, when I started looking around for somebody with a bachelor's degree in those fields, were not things that I would have been interested in doing. So I sort of stumbled into having to pursue a master's and ultimately a PhD. I looked around and I saw my instructors were doing some cool research and getting to read and learn about things that I thought were interesting. And I thought, I'm just never going to leave school. I'm going to stay right here and keep doing this. So that was my journey to get to the master's and ultimately PhD degrees.
That's great. So maybe to kick us off and get started, and as Dr. Stubbs said, you're probably here because you saw this title and thought, maybe I can learn a little something. So what's your reasoning right now of why you might pursue an advanced degree? Just go ahead and type it in the chat. It'll help us as we move forward and we can begin to think about what you're thinking and where you're at this point in time.
common theme? Opportunities for career advancement, job opportunities, strengthening a resume. Oh, Anthony, I really like that point. Due to the current success I'm having at UAGC. So maybe didn't necessarily think about pursuing a master's degree, but realizing I'm pretty good at this school thing. You're sort of following my steps here. I might just keep doing it. And promotional opportunities. Oh, Daisy, that's an interesting point. Participate in subjects that would be more interesting. So really narrowing down your focus to the career field or the discipline that you're interested in. And Christopher, I see advancement in your current job and career. Great insight here. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Sundstrom to talk about a couple of other potential reasons.
Yeah, I love seeing what you wrote in there, because probably the first reason that most students cite is like, what do you, I think maybe I should get a master's degree. It's because there's something that you're doing right now and you think, gee, if I had a master's degree, I might be able to advance myself in this current field, a field of interest of mine. And so that's often why students come back to school or decide to continue and pursue a master's degree. And by the way, there's a lot of students who take a gap between their bachelor's degree and their master's degree as they're trying to figure out some of this stuff. Like, what do I really want to do? What do I need to know? And would a degree help me? So enhancing your skill set to be able to choose something different or something new is certainly a reason for people to pursue a master's degree. For me, when I made a switch to public health, I had that interest in science and in healthcare, and I simply rechanneled some of my efforts, and I took it into public health. A lot of times people get a master's degree because they want to stay current in the topic. So if you're in a field and you have a bachelor's degree or you're earning your bachelor's degree, you know, the comment from one of our participants here about really narrowing that focus and getting more information on specific kinds of things certainly it is a reason for deciding to pursue a master's degree. Exploring strategic and leadership capabilities is another reason. So a lot of times we have a degree in an applied field and we think, maybe if I got a master's degree in a leadership field, which could be, for example, healthcare administration, or an MBA, or a master's in management, or another degree that takes my field of interest and adds a layer to that, which is leadership and management, is a very common reason why people get a master's degree. You might be considering a new career, and that's great. I'm going to add a caveat, though, that getting an advanced degree without relevant work experience may not be the answer that you're looking for. A little bit more of that later, but certainly getting a degree to reinforce your interest in the field may help you move into a new career. And I'll bet you at least a few people that are on this call and at this presentation may be working at a job that isn't their dream job. Lots of times we have jobs because it's paying the bills and taking care of our needs and this kind of thing, but we really have interest in another area. And so sometimes a degree can help with that. And I had to throw in that last one. You might think about pursuing a doctoral degree. You know, there are some people who wake up in the morning and say, I want to get a doctoral degree, but most of us kind of ease into that. It may not be something we decide right away. In fact, I waited about, I think it was about 10 or 12 years between my master's degree and my doctoral degree. One reason that's not on here that I think might be in the back of lots of people's mind, that kind of goes across this whole list, is it may help your earning capabilities. That getting a master's degree may be a stepping stone to a promotion at your own job, your current workplace, And sometimes a master's degree shows an employer that you really have what it takes to be committed and show your interest in the field by gaining that master's degree. And it could, in fact, if you look at the statistics from the labor statistics, people with a master's degree tend to earn more than people with just a bachelor's degree. So that's certainly a good possibility.
I appreciate your point on that last one, Peggy, in that getting any sort of advanced degree is a big step and a big decision, and perhaps even, more so from that step from the master's to the PhD or other advanced degrees. So thinking ahead and setting some goals. And I do think you made one other point, and I think this is relevant to the career field that a student is going into, whether or not that break can actually provide a great deal of value to the education. So in some subjects, some areas, and I think business is one of them, that real world experience is extremely valuable. And I think from one of the interviews that I did, I noticed that came up as something that could be something that would make you a much more attractive candidate for a degree too. So I appreciate that. So we've got another question for you. What are the potential downsides? So it's an exciting question to think about going on and getting a master's degree, but are there some cons, some risks, some other drawbacks, some of those reservations, those things that might be holding you back? If you would type those in the chat too, and we can kind of think through some of those. And yes, that is a cool image because that is about what it feels like, isn't it? It's a very precarious balancing act. Game of Jenga right here. Time commitment. That's definitely a big consideration. You've already spent 4 or more years working on your bachelor's degree. Are you going to spend 2 more? Balancing the challenging classes with work. And sometimes, just like in the honors program, the courses are often more challenging, but they're also more rewarding, so it doesn't necessarily feel like as much of a challenge, I guess. Time and cost, another key consideration. Dr. Sundstrom mentioned there's a cost and there's a return on that investment to consider, both sides of things there. Dr. Sundstrom, you want to share something?
You guys once again are really putting your finger on some of the considerations that we think are really important and we would like you to think about and do a balancing act, weighing the potential benefits against the potential costs or downsides. So another degree can be expensive. Certainly here at UAGC, many of our students are on financial aid, and that's a perfectly legitimate investment in your future to take out financial aid to get a degree. But you also have to consider, what does that mean in terms of my long-term financial situation? Because the payoff from earning a master's degree may not be immediate. So just because you finish that degree, it doesn't mean all of a sudden you're going to see a lot more money in your paycheck. Remember that investing in yourself and investing in your education is something that happens over time. So you might earn your master's degree and then need to continue to get that kind of experience that Stephanie was talking about, so that you can really build to the point where your master's degree begins to cash in on you. And yes, to the point in the chat, earning a degree requires a significant amount of time and energy. You're well aware of this now because most of you are probably working professionals. And so you're working on your degree as you're also you have work, you have family, you have outside interests and that sort of thing. Some of you are parents, and so you have responsibilities for children as well. So it does require a great deal from you personally, a great deal of time and commitment, and consider whether or not your family is as supportive as they need to be. I talked with one of my students recently, and she's moving in to her dissertation phase, so a little bit further along than some of you. But she mentioned to me that she had gotten her work done early so she could free up a weekend. And when she told her young daughter, "Mommy doesn't have to do schoolwork this weekend, her daughter was so excited that she burst out crying. Mommy, you're going to be able to be with us this weekend. You know, now this woman is very dedicated and she's working really hard, but there is a sacrifice that we pay in terms of our own time and energy. And, you know, it spills over to our family. So a master's degree, as I mentioned before, is not automatically going to increase your earning or your job status, but it may over a period of time. But you can't expect that it's like a light switch that, gee, I have my degree now and suddenly I can get ready for a job. So if you don't have the work experience to leverage a master's degree in whatever field that you pursue, then you should probably be thinking about doing something in tandem about gaining the kind of work experience you need to leverage that master's degree. So if you're somebody who has one of those jobs that I call maintenance jobs, and I've had those in my life where I needed a job and it wasn't the most demanding job in the world, but I could do other things that were important to me in my life. And when I got those life things figured out, I looked around, I said, oh, I need a different job. So depending on where you're at right now, what kind of work experience you have, you may have to invest a little bit to really get the full benefit out of that master's degree. So these are all the potential kinds of things. Some of them, as you mentioned earlier, are really positive, like it could open doors for you. And here we just want to say, but you know, maybe not right away. So understand that there's a trade-off between the time and energy you're going to put into it and the immediate outcome or benefits.
Very good point. And that makes me think about, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who's an occupational therapist this past weekend. And she was sort of combining concerns about the expense and the family. Mm-hmm. She has a doctor of occupational therapy, but she works at a university, and to advance, she would need to get a PhD. And so she thought to herself, well, I'll wait until my children are older. They're young, and she wanted to enjoy the time with them now. But one of her colleagues pointed out, the longer you wait, the less time you have to gain back that money that you're spending on that degree pursuit, and you won't have those funds to do things for and with your children now too. So it's a really tricky business to figure out exactly when that right time to go is. So as Dr. Sundstrom mentioned earlier, it might not be that you shouldn't do it. It might just be not right now, and it might be. So,
and just one extra point there that I would add, Stephanie, is we talked about the time and effort that's required. And if you've seen my picture, you know, earning a bachelor's degree maybe takes effort up to here. Earning a master's degree takes incrementally more effort than a bachelor's degree. It is harder, tends to be a shorter program, but the classes are harder and there are more expectations on students when they get into a master's program. And I must tell you that pursuing a PhD is up here. So it isn't just, sort of going high school, associate's degree, bachelor's degree, master's degree. It isn't just sort of a even kind of sloping uphill. There are incremental differences. So just understand that so you're not surprised if you decide to do that. So lots of people do pursue a master's degree. And here's what a couple of them said. These are some people that I talked to. And one noted exactly what some of you had said, which is I wanted to move from my current position to a higher level of leadership position. And she looked around and she saw the people at that higher level all had master's degrees. She had a lot of experience. She didn't have that degree. And so she went back and is earning a master's, an MBA, and got a new job offer based on this personal and professional development. So she looked around and sort of saw, boy, it certainly makes sense for me to do this. Other people said, whew, gosh, like Stephanie, I got my bachelor's degree and it was just kind of natural to keep going. And many people do that, and that's perfectly reasonable. But some people aren't quite sure what they want to do. So you might finish a bachelor's degree and say, okay, well, what job is it that I can get? And the third person I talked to said, wasn't quite certain what I wanted to do. So I decided to try to get a job in a field that interested me, get the master's degree, and the combination of the two would then leverage that person to be able to be successful. And he has been. So that's, those are some, I will, they're not exact quotes, but they're the essence of what these people told me. And Stephanie, I think you talked to several people too, right?
I did. So I talked to 6 different people, and the quotes that you gave there summarize many of the reasons why. But I asked a few other questions. So Josh, who earned an MBA, said my employer would pay for it and it fit my career goals. So that is one thing to consider. If you already have a job and that job will pay for you to pursue additional education, it can be a lot more attractive of an option. That maybe opens up some potential that you wouldn't have otherwise. And perhaps when you're seeking a job with your bachelor's degree, you might look at that and when comparing employers, find out if they do offer some additional compensation, tuition reimbursement. Will it actually ultimately result in a raise if you do get that additional degree? So definitely something to consider there. So I asked all of the people that I talked to what considerations they had, or what things that they would want to share with you all. And Josh pointed out that he was blessed to finish his degree with a great support system at home. It takes a lot of time and effort to complete the degree. Everyone around needs to know it's a commitment that can interfere with normal life. And interestingly, I talked to 2 men, and both of them pointed out how important it was to have that support at home, and how they thought that perhaps it might be more challenging for mom to pursue this particular outcome in life than it would have been for them at that time and with the demands of family. So it is unfair, certainly, that that's how it works, but it may work that way. It might not, but it is definitely something to be realistic about in your own situation. And Josh, with his MBA, I alluded to this earlier when Dr. Sundstrom made a point about taking some time in between to work on building that career. He indicated it was really helpful to have experience in the real world, and it allowed him to challenge what he was learning at school, but also what he was doing at work. And so it really enhanced the knowledge that he was gaining during that time period. His advice for folks who are pursuing any form of higher education is that it's most important to build a network in your field with the right people. It might not pay off immediately, just like that degree, but it's always nice to have folks that you can call and bounce ideas off of, maybe even get a different job in the future, who you know is very important in almost any field. And what you know and how you can help people, how you can be an asset to them, will really help you build your own career ultimately. So to summarize that, have friends in many places and be always conscious of those networks. Peggy, did you want to add on any of these points?
Uh, no, I mean, when I heard you say that Josh thought it might be tougher for a mom to pursue a degree as opposed to a dad, um, those go back to traditional roles that we often assign to ourselves. So your relationship and your life may not be that way, but think about it. And if you are a parent, particularly if you're a single parent, whether you're male or female, it can be an extra burden because you can't simply focus on yourself. When we're parents, we really need to pay attention to our children and make certain that we're making good decisions for them. So that's an important consideration.
Absolutely, and that leads really well into this next one. I talked with Tanis, who got an ed specialist degree, and her reason was that she realized when she finished her degree, which was in psychology, that it would be really difficult to earn a good living without an advanced degree. And so her hope was that this particular job, working in education, would offer reasonable hours for balancing a family schedule. So she was hoping that this particular degree would allow her more flexibility in her future life. She was looking forward to that career and what that would contribute to her. So another thing that comes up here and with others is the opportunity cost. So will the career advancement allow me to earn enough money to justify the time and the delayed entry into the full-time workforce? And that comes up with a few folks, and also Dr. Sundstrom mentioned that earlier. So in terms of family plans, she mentioned, well, one of her major considerations was, will the degree work well for my future family plans? Am I going to end up having to work late at night or travel or continually update my credentials in order to stay current and active in this field? And one of her additional bits of advice was to consider whether or not you truly enjoy the field that you're going into. Also, if you choose an emotionally exhausting field, it might be difficult to find a work-life balance. So definitely consider that aspect when you're making the determination, not just whether or not to pursue that advanced degree, but which degree you want to pursue. And a great piece of advice here was to talk to folks who've been in the field for 10 years or more to get that inside scoop. I was really pleased to hear, thought that her advanced degree helped her with critical thinking and big picture analysis. As instructors, I know Dr. Sundstrom and I always are focusing on critical thinking, and we want to help students develop this. And it's nice to know that additional schooling can really help with that beyond just the content that you're learning in your courses. So things that can be applied to other areas in your life as well. Definitely a bonus. And Peggy, did you want to jump in? Okay. If you do at any point, please do. So I talked to Carrie, who had a Master's of Science in Education, with a really interesting specialty here of clinical mental health counseling. She was looking more in terms of self-fulfillment. So she realized that this particular degree offered her a skill set. It wasn't going to help her make more money necessarily. It wasn't going to bump her up on the pay scale at her current employer, which was a school, because she was already sort of maxed out of where she needed to be. But she felt like this would help her be a better wife and mother, but also it offered skills that she thought would be useful in her current job. And it was a versatile degree. She felt like it would offer her other opportunities if she ever chose to leave that particular position. So thinking more broadly and thinking about other opportunities that may arise. You never know where life's going to take you, and so it's nice to build sort of a broad portfolio of skills that you can share. So her consideration here was, do you have the time, money, and personal resources necessary to be successful? So we've talked about time and we've talked about money, but those personal resources aren't necessarily just your family and that support, but also time management, a dedicated working space, an ability to persevere when things are really difficult. Some of those different kinds of qualities. Peggy, can you think of some other key qualities that you've really noticed in graduates over the years?
Yeah, the personal tenacity and commitment to doing this, even when you don't want to. And if you're like me, you may have started an exercise plan or a diet plan or some other personal improvement. Well, how good are you at that? Because if we can't make that commitment to ourselves, remember there's a lot of demands when you're in school. And you know this right now from your bachelor's programs that that sometimes you can't just say, oh, gee, I'll just do that later. You have to be willing to do it right now. And a theme here that I'm seeing, Steph, is that, you know, will you get the benefits over a period of time? Because it really may take some time before those benefits accrue for you.
Absolutely. You know, we go into these programs and when you first sign up, you think, okay, it's a 2-year program. I'll be done in 2 years. But you might hit some bumps along the road. You might have to take a leave of absence. Things happen unexpectedly, financially, in terms of your family life. All kinds of curveballs can be thrown your way. And if that happens, realize that time frame might be extended. So Carrie also, one of the things that she pointed out, she said her particular program, she felt like maybe wasn't as open at the start in terms of some of the requirements. So she found out after she started that she was going to have to solicit participants, basically. And she didn't know that she would have to do that on her own. And so she felt like it would be useful for folks to find out, what does that program really require? Is it, because often a master's degree is different than a bachelor's degree. With a bachelor's degree, you show up, you take some tests, you write some papers, and that's the end of the story. But in a master's program, you might have to do some research or an internship, and that may require you to have some sort of connections in place, or be willing to go out and knock on doors and make those connections. And so ensure that you are fully aware of what those are before you start, and that you're willing and able to do that. And then also consider how you learn best, whether it's online and in person, and whether that is congruent with the degree you are pursuing. So for example, you might be able to get an online degree, but if you don't learn well that way, if you need somebody face to face, perhaps you should choose your program at a different school. Or if you're working in a service industry, it might be especially important to do something face to face versus online, because it gives you additional practice if you don't really have that work experience to back up what you're going into. Would you like to speak to any of those things, Peggy?
No, I'm great. Thanks.
Okay, excellent. All right, so I talked to Jared, who had an MAB, which he explained to me is basically an MBA in agribusiness. And he indicated his was just the next natural step. He's self-employed, has a business, and thought that this would be beneficial in terms of his resume and building a clientele. He made a really interesting point. He said that a degree opens doors, but it also closes some. He always thought he'd pursue philosophy, which was his bachelor's degree, but when he decided to pursue the master's, he was forced to make a life decision. Once he took on that additional time and debt, he knew that philosophy was not going to be in the future for him. He was not going to be able to go that direction. So it was sort of a fork in the road for him, and it was a little bit bittersweet. It's exciting because there are more opportunities now for him in that field of business, but he did have to leave something behind. So recognize that you are making a life decision that might be really tough to put you in one direction or another. His advice was to play to your strengths, polish what you're good at. I think somebody mentioned in the chat earlier that you were doing well in school right now, so why not? Absolutely. If you're good at this thing, do this thing, and also recognizing that life isn't just anymore. You don't just go to school, get a 40-hour-a-week job, stay employed with the same company forever and ever and ever. There are a lot of different roundabout, non-linear paths that you can take, and be sort of creative and think outside the box in terms of how you could use your degree, your advanced degree, in a really creative way to really open some additional doors for yourself. So he pointed out he works with a lot of farmers in his business, and many of them don't think their kids need to go to school at all. But he does know several farmers who did pursue even advanced degrees, and they've used that to start other businesses on the side, or use those skills in other ways that they wouldn't have necessarily realized in advance they could do. Marissa, who has an MA in education, she went to school for the pay boost, and she was at the time she was getting divorced and needed that extra money. And this is Peggy's point earlier about it. As a single parent, this can be a real challenge, but it also can be really appealing to, on the other side of things, have that additional income to support your family. So one of her considerations she really wanted to share with folks is, how many courses and how much time will it take? A master's program might be 30 credits, it might be 60 credits. It really can vary quite a bit. And so look at that between different programs and different schools, and make sure that you find something that's a good fit. It's not, back to that, starting the exercise program, it's not always easy to stay focused, and distractions can make that end goal seem really far away. So her advice was to choose something enjoyable, and that might help maintain that motivation and get you going through those times when it really becomes difficult to keep on keeping on, really. And then one last interview here, Courtney, who had an MA in psychology. She was also taking advantage of tuition reimbursement, but wanted to add something extra to her credentials to rise above others in her particular job. So she pointed out, she shared a lot of things that are very motivational, I think. Do you need the degree or do you want it? Both are perfectly valid reasons. But consider what they are and write those things down now so that someday when you're looking back and you're struggling through that thesis or whatever it is that you're doing, you can look back and remember why you decided to start this in the first place. Consider the type of learner, look at that return on investment, and then again, research others in the role you want to end up in, because there are many different paths to the same outcome. You may need a specific degree, but there might be options in terms of what degree you need to do the thing you want to do. And so really fully explore your options. Use your resources, look into the kinds of institutional support that are available, back everything up, and connect with folks. This is kind of some more of that networking, but network within your school with instructors and with your classmates, just like you're doing here through the honors program. It's a really valuable thing to do, and then also focus on that time management piece.
You know, there's a wonderful theme that's coming through this. There is no one pathway for you. And life is really about a series of choices made or not made. So you need to find what fits for you and what makes sense for you. And it may not be the same thing that makes sense for me or anybody else on this call, because you're unique and you really. For some people, it means waiting to go back to school after they've gotten some more career experience. For other people, it's a natural extension to go from one degree to another. No right answer there, and no perfect degree. So what we're going to share with you coming up are a little bit of research that we did that kind of looked at what are some of the fields of interest right now that have some pretty good potential for jobs and job growth. And I pulled a lot of this information off the web, and I also then tried to match it up. You know, I love UAGC. That's the reason I work here. And I thought if you love it as much as we do, that you might be interested in knowing what kinds of degrees we have here at UAGC that might fit some of your interests. So the health profession is booming right now. We have an aging population. People are living longer, and there are more of them. And so healthcare and demand for professionals in that field has never been stronger. So lots and lots of job potential and growth in the health profession. So we do have master's degrees here in healthcare administration, in human services, in public health, and in health information and analytics. And those are four very different kinds of degrees. So again, do some research, think about it. If you're interested in a health profession, there might be something in there for you. The other field that always has a very high demand is anything in business administration, management, leadership, and every type of field has somebody in charge. Somebody always runs the show, and most of those people have experience and training, and oftentimes a degree in something around leadership or management. Lots of opportunities at UAGC for master's degrees in this field, which, by the way, has very high medium wage figures. So well-paying careers in leadership and management. So we have a master's in accountancy, in finance, technology management, organizational management, business administration, human resources management, and healthcare administration. So lots of opportunities. If this is a field that you might be interested in getting a degree that might take some of your background information, add a master's degree onto it, and then make you a more attractive candidate. So I mentioned that I got a degree in biology. And at the time when I graduated, that kind of meant that you could go be a lab tech somewhere, because a bachelor's degree in biology, frankly, wasn't a calling card for something. But when I got my master's degree in public health, which took my interest in health sciences and took it to a different level in public health and public health education, and then there were jobs that were very specific to that master's degree. So that's one of the ways I leverage it. I did not get my MPH here at UAGC, but there are lots of programs like that could help you. So consider business and management. Computer science and information technology, I hardly have to mention this. We can't turn around without something happening electronically. I heard this morning that it's been 50 years since the first video game, which was Pong, was introduced. And if you remember, Pong was like a ping pong ball that you batted back and forth on this black and white video screen. So in 50 years, we've come so far to the fact that everything's on our little phone device. So jobs in computer science and information technology have a huge demand, much greater job growth than average, much like the health professions. Median salaries more than double the national average median salary, but it does require some specialized knowledge. So you can get jobs with bachelor's degrees, but master's degrees can really help in this field. We have a master's degree in technology management, in information systems management, and in health information and analytics. So we have degrees that are in these programs. And I'll tell you what, people who have technical background tend to have a pretty easy time of finding that new and better job. So real good opportunity here. Psychology, counseling, social work, criminal justice, these are all, kind of what I would call social sciences degrees. There's lots of degrees there's lots of jobs in these fields, and many of them actually require a master's degree to move into positions that are other than entry level. So job experience is key if you get a degree in one of these fields, because you can't just all of a sudden decide you're going to go into criminal justice because you got a master's degree in criminal justice. You better have something to back that up. But these master's degrees really can lead to those administrative and leadership positions, which, as we mentioned earlier, is a way to boost one's earnings if you can get into those kinds of positions. Again, master's degree in human services, psychology, early childhood education, leadership, special ed, and criminal justice. So quite a wide variety of degree programs that are in this social sciences field. Lots for you to consider there. And finally, education and humanities. These are fields that many of our students are really interested in. And in fact, among the students who get doctoral degrees here at UAGC, I would say that about half of them have as one of their interests, gee, I'd like to teach. Right? Or I am teaching and I'd like to teach at a higher level. So the prospect for somebody with a master's degree in education and humanities tends to be in leadership roles, right? So principals, superintendents, lead teachers, administrators in human services. So MA in education and MA in psychology are both degrees that help people who are interested in these fields. I could add the MS in human services too. So this is just a quick summary, but notice what's underlined there in yellow. There's this wonderful website from the U.S. Department of Labor. And it's called the ONET database, and it's O and then the little asterisk ONET. And if you type in ONET, it'll take you to this great website that actually tells you, if you type in the category or classification of a job, it'll tell you what kinds of things are required for people who hold those jobs. And so this is a very sophisticated database. It's a wonderful place to say, hey, I wonder what it would take if I wanted to hold a particular kind of position. Well, go to this ONET database and type in the type of job you might be interested in, and it'll give you some information. It'll also tell you the kinds of degrees people tend to hold, or whether a particular kind of degree is required to get into that field. I think you'll find it very interesting, and you can get all kinds of great information to see if your interests pair up with your job experience and with your degree. So just a little bit of research you can do on your own.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to sort of summarize some of the themes of the things that we've been talking about thus far. Many people do pursue a master's degree. Should you? It is possible. Some of the things to consider: make sure you have the necessary resources, support system, and motivation, and make sure that this is the right time for you. If you do decide to pursue that degree, remember that education is the one thing that nobody can take away from you. Be gentle with yourself. If this were easy, everybody would be doing it, but it's not. It takes a lot of time and effort. You made this decision for a reason, just like you made the decision to pursue your bachelor's degree for a reason. It's okay to struggle, but let it fuel your fire and not burn you down. So fail forward. Use each moment to learn and grow and become a better version of yourself. And then before, during, and after earning that additional advanced degree, advocate for yourself. You're worth it. See what kinds of additional pay increases might be available, promotions might be available, and don't be afraid to ask. The worst that can happen is that somebody will tell you no.
So here comes kind of a fun part just for you, and this really is just for you. So grab a piece of paper or something to write on, scribble on, and either jot down these questions or answers to these questions, and these may help you with that process of starting to sort out whether or not it's time to pursue a master's degree. How do I think I will use the master's degree? Is it for promotion within my own company or in my own field, or do I want to change? What are the realistic chances of getting a promotion, a new growth opportunity, or a new job as a result of a master's degree? And be honest with yourself here. If you're somebody who's struggled at work and whose boss says, oh gosh, this is one of my trouble children, then it may be that you should clean up your act at work, because simply getting another degree, if you don't have good references and people don't say, oh my goodness, that person has great job skills, it may not be realistic. If you're considering a change in career, do you have the experience to leverage the degree? And if the answer is yes, go for it. That could really be helpful. But if you don't have the experience in the field that you're interested in, are you willing to get the necessary experience? I talked with a student recently who's getting a degree in leadership, and I asked her about her leadership experience. She said, well, I really don't have much experience. And I said, ooh, drop everything, go get a job, some type of a managerial job. It really doesn't matter what it is, but you have to start building your resume with the credentials of having leadership or managerial experience. So think about that, because a degree in a field where you have no experience, there may not just may not be as many open doors. Are you open to learning new things and questioning your perspectives? Because in master's programs, you're often challenged to look at the world in a different way and adopt new models, new theories, new ways of interacting. And if you're open to that, it can be a wonderful experience. If you think you know everything already, then you might have a tough time. Do you have the time and energy to spend another 1 or 2 years in school? And this goes back to the next one, which is, how supportive is your family? How supportive is your network? Do you have a strong network of people who will help you and support you as you're moving along. How prepared are you to balance all of those pieces? And one of the people that Stephanie interviewed talked about this work-life balance. How are you doing at it right now? And if you're just barely hanging on by a thread, you might need to give yourself a little break. Remember, you can always come back to school. You can always come back to school. So if you're thinking that, yeah, a master's degree might be really good for me, but maybe not yet, it's perfectly okay. Don't wait forever. The longer you wait, more water under the bridge, but you can absolutely get your act together in terms of family and friends and school and work. And a lot of people just need a break after they finish one degree before they move on to another. So do consider that. And also consider how the decision will impact you financially if you're not able to work at the kind of job that you might have if you weren't also putting 10, 15, 20 hours a week into schoolwork. Would that make a difference for you? So are you prepared to do that financially? So just some questions for you to kind of get you started and thinking about it. There is no right or wrong answer. There's only a good or better answer for you. And it's back to that individual experience. Steph, I think that's just about at the end, right? So
It is. I just had one other thing that I
Yeah.
wanted to share, and then we can open it up
Perfect.
for questions. But this is just sort of some next steps.
Yes.
Really narrow down your field of interest, talk to people, make sure that this is a direction that you want to take, that it is what you think it is, because sometimes that degree wouldn't actually allow you to do what you think it is that you want to do. Review your resources and support system, as Peggy was talking about. Choose a university that offers a degree that fits your needs and wants. Consider things like the entry requirements, how long the program will take, how much it costs, whether you will leave with a particular credential. Sometimes that is necessary to work in a certain field. Sometimes it's not. It just depends. And in terms of applications, you'll need your official transcripts, your diploma, letters of recommendation, hence the importance of networking with your professors now, but also into the future. You might also need standardized test scores or an essay or other materials, and in some cases you might even have to interview. I also mentioned here your curriculum vitae. So one of the things that you could be doing right now is working on adding additional things that demonstrate your leadership experience. And maybe it's not in a job, but maybe you have done some things at the university, or maybe you could think about some different volunteer opportunities that you could be doing now that would make you a more attractive candidate. Because getting into graduate school, depending upon where you're going, could be more or less difficult. There are caps in some places in terms of the number of students or the requirements that would need to happen in order to be accepted. And then complete that necessary coursework once you're there and do the research or internship, and you are good to go. I'm going to leave this here. This first one is the ONET site that Dr. Sundstrom mentioned earlier. An absolute gem. I had never heard of it, and I really got swept away in researching things there. So I definitely recommend that. I did find a couple other things that I thought might be useful that really had some interesting data. The second one will give you insight into how much it costs to get that additional degree, so that can be kind of useful too. And then another one that's just a directory of online resources. So I think we have just a few minutes, but we can move to some questions, discussion just for those few last minutes.
You're very welcome, Stephanie. Thanks for hanging out with us for a little bit. One thing I would say is if you have any follow-up questions, because sometimes those come a day or two later, I don't our email addresses aren't here, but I'd certainly speak for myself that if you take my name, Peggy.Sundstrom at uagc.edu, you can reach me by email. I'd be more than happy to answer any follow-up questions that you have. And Stephanie's email is the same thing, Stephanie.Stubbs. Yes, perfect. Thank you very much, Mark. So.
Oh, glad to hear that, Daisy. I wish we could have captured your quote earlier, Peggy, that there's no right decision or right time. It's a good decision for you, and you should say that again and type it out. Is that
There's good decisions and better decisions. Just decide which you're at. Because there aren't right and wrong answers here.
Yes.
Make sure it fits for you.
That encapsulates everything we've talked about today, I think.
Yes, thank you for sharing so many wonderful resources and information and things to consider when students are making these important decisions. And I would add too, just like with your undergraduate degree, with a master's or a PhD, it's not always a straight path. You might start, you might stop, but don't give up. You can always come back and keep working at it. So just as a matter of what fits for you and what your priorities are.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I took 3 tries to get my doctorate. It wasn't that I failed the first 2 times, just wasn't the right timing. And I walked away and came back, and it still wasn't the best fit for me. And I walked away again and worked for many years. So these things happen. And I think to expect a particular path to be just kind of unfolding like clockwork, that's not quite the way things work. Peggy and Stephanie, thank you so much for this presentation. I really enjoyed it immensely. And I'm glad to read some comments here that some of the students have found it really helpful too. But if there are any questions, feel free to post them or send them on to Peggy and Stephanie later. Something like that, Mark. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for the invitation. It's really it was really nice to think about this from the standpoint of how do we make those decisions and what are our options. So it caused me to go back and rethink, how did I get where I am? Because I took a really crooked path. And in fact, I had, this is my 3rd career, and and the one I love the best, but I had 2 wonderful careers before this that were very different. And now here I am. So it just goes to show that you don't have to be stuck in a rut. You can make changes, you can move back and forth. And so keep working at it. You do not have to have a master's degree in the same field that your bachelor's is in. No, indeed. Many people make a change. So a master's in human resources with a background in psychology actually would be really powerful, because psychology undergirds the rest of the social sciences. So Whitney, if that's what you're interested for, I think that's a dynamic combination and absolutely not necessary to pursue the master's in the same field.
Thank you all. This has been really fun. And I echo Peggy in that it was really interesting to think about this from that perspective, because it was many years ago that we were making those choices, and it's good to think these things through and share some of.
This is just so helpful to be able to have a talk like this. I mean, I'm thinking back to my own college years, and I graduated. I didn't know what to do. I just stayed on in graduate school because that's what a lot of people did, and it would have been really helpful to have more of a picture of what the opportunities and options were. So.
Well, happily you landed in a place, Clifford, where you were wonderfully successful and highly respected. So whatever got you to this place, kudos to you for making.
I use the image, the image I use, Peggy, is the labyrinth. And that is, in the labyrinth, when you walk it, you're walking away and towards the center at different times, but you're always headed towards the center. And that's kind of the way my own educational and work journey has been. So I do believe that even if we end up in a different path, we may look back and say, that other thing we did contribute to getting to where I am now.
And here's how it fits. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, I hope everybody has a great rest of the day, and thanks for spending some time with us.
Yes, thank you so much. And Mark, thank you for your support today.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for attending. And look for our email with upcoming events for December and also into 2023. Have a good afternoon, everybody. Bye.
Bye.